our fifth aspect of becoming of manhood in the book is finishing strong, which is a trail's end. And so for us, that really speaks to legacy. What I tell young guys, I say, listen, whatever you put to the grindstone will be written on your tombstone. So what do you want people to say about you when you die? When you die and you are buried in the ground, your family will be at your funeral. Will they be mourning or rejoicing, or will they care less about you? Your people that you work with will not mourn your loss when you die. So live your life in a way that your family mourns you well. We're all about finishing with an exclamation mark. Jesus on the cross, his last words, he screamed from the cross, "It is finished." And most Bibles will have an exclamation mark right there to prove it. I want to finish my life with an exclamation mark.
Jim, my brother, welcome to the Superhuman Life.
Man, I'm excited to be labeled among the superhumans.
Dude, I'm excited with you, man. I mean, since our conversation on Men Never Read, I've just been so looking forward to having you back on. And we're just going to jump right in today, Jim, because we have roughly about 60 minutes, and I want to make sure we can get as much possible out of this time. And I'm going to start with a big question, man. You wrote an entire book on the subject here, and hopefully in the next hour, we can really unpack this and get to the core of this answer.
Absolutely.
What is a man?
I'll tell you what, just a very quick answer. A man is as a man does. Period. I had a book I was delivering to, I had a podcast guest on recently, and he had a really well-written book on forgiveness. So I bought several copies, and I was driving to a pastor friend's house yesterday, and I pulled up, and I pulled up in front of this Prius, and I'm on the phone with a buddy of mine going, "Hey, hold on, I got to get my buddy's wife. My buddy's wife just pulled up into the driveway. I want to make sure she gets the book to her husband." Can you believe he got out of the car? It was his Prius. And I thought, part of me would say, "Oh man, you drive a Prius." I have another friend that has a Mini Cooper, Listen, a man is not what you drive. I drive a lifted Toyota Tundra, right? So a man is not what you drive. And a man is not a guy who has cats or has dogs or votes this way or votes that way or dresses this way or has this kind of body type. A man is as a man does. So that's the very simple, generalized version of a man. A man is not what you say you are. If you have to say you are a man, you may not be a man.
I love that. If you have to say you are a man, you may not be a man. And I'm glad it has nothing to do with what we drive. I have a 2021 Kia Forte parked out in the front yard right now. So it's been a rebuilding phase for Frank Rich financially for the last couple of years after some business failures. But it gets me from point A to point B. And for the longest time, like I put a lot of value in that stuff. And I put a lot of value in the cars, in the material possessions, the watch, the shoes, right? Even my body. So if a man is what a man does, what is it that makes a male become a man?
Well, I would say that a man, every person who is a male is born that way. So we are male by birth, man by choice. So when a male decides, I need to grow up, I need to make some decisions that are going to benefit more in this world than just myself. I was at 28 years old, I became a man, I believe. I was a college graduate. I had a full ride scholarship to play football. I had started there for 4 years. I was a pastor at the time. I was a football coach and married. I looked great on paper. The problem is my wife thought she married a man and she married a male. And so it wasn't until 2 years into a tough marriage that my wife finally got the man that she signed up for.
You said you were 28 when you became a man. I was 35, almost 36. So we have a lot of young men listening to here.
Yes.
Guys that aren't yet 28, guys that aren't 36. What I'd love to do is take the rest of here today and maybe give those men the insights and the tools that they need so they don't have to get to 28, get to 35, have lost hundreds of thousands of dollars, had business failures, have had a moment where they looked themselves in the mirror and said, you've been a fraud for the last 20 years. Now it's time to wake up. So let's talk about, really providing the men out there with the tools. So you said it's got to make a choice. Where does he need to be in life, I guess, maybe to be ready to make this choice?
Like your story, Frank, like my story, a lot of times, sadly, a man gets to the end of his rope and he kind of ties a knot and holds on. It's usually where a guy gets to the lowest point where he realizes, man, I've been doing all these things. With your podcast, which I love, our podcast, we try to get guys before they get there. We try to get guys before there's a wake of pain and suffering behind their poor choices. And so I wrote this book, Strong Men, Dangerous Times, and that book lays out the 5 things that a man does to move from male to man. And so, and the hard part, Frank, and you know this, is we live in a world that's, we have this generation, my generation, we are being raised more and more by in a fatherless generation. So these young men are growing up and they don't know what they need to do to be a man. Do they YouTube it? I mean, do they watch The Bachelorette or The Bachelor? I mean, what do they, do they, maybe Chunk Norris can help us here. What do we have to do? Where do we discover where we need to, where do we find out what a man is and what he does? Who do we look to? Men are confused. That's why we have these man laws. You know what I mean? Men are confused today. And so we create this list of things. Men dress like this. Men don't dress like this. Men talk like this. Men look like this. Men, deal with women this way. And it really, we've taught these young guys growing up a wrong definition of manhood. And men are conquerors, right? We like to conquer. We want the next hill we're going to die on. And so what I've done in this book is I've said, okay, guys, here's the target. Here is what a man is. I'm going to give you the target, and if you agree or disagree, that's okay with me, as long as you have an aiming point. And that's what we've done.
Yeah, and having an aim is obviously it's at the center of all the work that we do as well. I believe that's fundamentally necessary for a guy to have a vision that he's working towards. You brought up the fatherlessness, piece there, and that's something I've talked a lot about. I had a video recently that we shared to Instagram and TikTok. It was like the 3 things that are really holding young men back, right? It's single mothers, not attacking women, but men need men in their lives. The second one was participation trophies. It's like the removal of that competitive nature, that competitive drive that is a part of all boys. And the third one, obviously, centered around the work that we do, it is pornography. But what else? I mean, I know that those aren't the only 3. Are there other things that you see in society, that you see in the world today, that are really holding men back, that are causing this confusion?
Oh yeah. I think there's a whole movement out there that basically, for lack of a better word, we'll just call it social justice, that basically says that it's not okay to be a man and that masculinity is toxic. But if you look at the definition of masculinity in the dictionary, so let's just take a secular source, a dictionary, and it basically says doing things that make one a man. So if I'm doing things that make me a man, that is masculinity. Well, doing things that make a male, that's toxicity. So a masculine man is never toxic. He may have toxic moments, but he is masculine. He's doing the things a man does, where a male does the things a child or a boy does. And so this is this message that our culture is telling men, and we see it all over the media. We see it all over the news. And it says that you cannot do what men are supposed to do. Women and men are on equal planes, do equal things, and are just the same. And they are not the same. They are equal, but they are different. And once we recognize that men are different and we embrace what masculinity brings to the table, once our society does that and realizes that true masculinity is not toxic, the toxicity in this world comes from males masquerading as men. And hey, listen, those males can be Navy SEALs. They can be the gnarliest guys on the planet. But if they are creating toxicity around their decisions, let's say around family and marriage, they're hurting our culture. Or it can be a pro athlete. If that pro athlete is out there womanizing while he's married, that pro athlete is giving a horrible name to masculinity. So what we look at is we look at this fully mature male, and we say, well, that guy must be a man because he's getting paid, this many millions a year, because he's, got a long arm, he can throw well, or he can hit hard, or he can run fast. And that's just a wrong message, because manhood is way more than our appearance and our abilities. It's something that we choose to do. I mean, I've seen guys that you and I could blow them over. They're that small and whip, we could blow them over with a puff of air, just kind of juke, and they're done, But some of these guys are some of those manly guys I've met because of the choices they make every day to step up to the plate.
So if it's not about our size, our strength, all those play elements to it. It's not about what we do, how much money we make, what we own, our possessions. What are the key virtues? What must choices we begin to make to lean into this masculinity and really evolve into manhood and no longer, stay a male?
Yeah, I would say unless you're a sociopath or an outright idiot, men place a high value on this thing called integrity. I've never met a man who wants his kids to raise children to grow up to be government supported, lazy, unemployed felons. Men don't raise their sons to be that way. Men raise their sons to be men of honor, integrity, dignity, loyalty, faithfulness, hard work. And so for me, if I were to look at a mountain, the trailhead of that mountain, the foundation of masculinity, and I don't care what you believe, I don't care what part of history you grow up in, I don't care what part of the world you grew up in, I don't care what religion you are, if you do not live your life day by day protecting your integrity, no real man will look at you and think you are a man. Men see through that male masquerade. If a man is a liar, a stealer, a cheater, you talked about before you became a man, you'd run to the bathroom and look at porn. You'd be like looking at porn. But once you became a man, the Bible says you put childish ways behind you. Like, I know we still struggle with all these things, right? Because we're sinners. But it's when you decide, hey, I'm gonna push beyond this subhuman life into this superhuman life. Wow, that was for you. Did you like that?
I like that, man. Jim, what I really love about you, man, I know you spent a large portion of your career working in ministry, in the church, and then now you run this nonprofit, right? And you really speak to Christian men from all over the world. But when I hear you speak, it's like you don't talk like the guys in the church.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I don't know. I've heard this word used, Christianese. It's like sometimes like we get so caught up in like the words and language and trying to sound like, we're faith-filled, or trying to sound like we're really into the Bible. And it's reality. It's like you said nothing there. What is it, for you that has enabled you, or why, have you made this choice to speak differently than, I guess, the rest of the Christian world? Does the question make sense?
It does, man. That's such a loaded question. I would just say this, man. When I look at my body, when I look at my mouth, when I look at the things I say and the things I love to hunt, I love to fish. The reason I was barely here on time for the podcast is the guy that came to put my dishwasher in is like, dude, you killed all these? I'm like, hell yeah. You know what I mean? So yeah, I did. I'm going to kill some more before it's all over. But I embraced who I was. And here's what I've realized, Frank, is that God has made me a certain way with certain passions. He's given me a history, a background. He's given me 3 sons who are now men. And so for me, when I look at my life, I go, okay, who has God made me to be? And so I believe that if God made me, which most guys will say, yeah, I believe God made me. Then I go, okay, if God made you, have you ever met anything that hates its creation? No, it loves its creation. So God made you, and if God made you, he loves you, right? Well, then have you ever met a guy or anybody who creates things, a machinist? A machinist doesn't make something to throw away. A machinist makes something to use. They go, yeah. A coach makes an athlete to use. Yes. A mechanic fixes a car to use. Yes. Well, then didn't God make you to use? Doesn't he have a plan for your life? They go, whoa, well, yeah. So he made you. He loves you. He's got a plan for you. My next question, this is my man theology 101, dude. My next question is, well, if he made you, he loves you, and he has a plan for you, how can you ever fulfill that plan without radically devoting your life to pursuing the one who has the plan for you? And they go, they suck their thumb in the fetal position, crying for their mommy because they realize, holy cow, I've been guessing my whole life. And I don't have to guess anymore. When I realized how God made me, I'm doing this 65,000 push-up challenge, and we started with 400 guys around the world. Now we're down to 40. I had to get a steroid injection in my shoulder 2 days ago because I got an injury, but I'm going to keep pumping, baby. Keep pumping, baby, because I realized that, men depend on other men. And there's a lot of excuses to get out of the game, and we've got to embrace who we are, and I'm not a quitter. And I would consider myself a man's man. That's how God made me. And so for me, I think Christianity has sissified men because these 2 reasons. Reason 1, they've made Jesus out to be a 5'8", 120-pound, blonde-haired, blue-eyed dude who's kind of wimpy looking. And he wasn't. First of all, he was brown. First of all, he was a construction guy, so he's probably 5'9", 5'8", probably 170 pounds, probably this big old, Popeye looking built guy. He's way different than what we've portrayed him to be. And I think the second thing is the guys, and this isn't true across the board, but a lot of the men who are in the pulpit today, they do not represent Jesus in a masculine way. In other words, a lot of pastor guys, we are pencil pushers. And so we don't have this makeup that would draw guys in. And so what happens is a lot of these guys who had no influence when they were younger because they were not aggressive guys, they were more intellectual. When they get into the pulpit, they tend to attract women and not men. And so I think having a pulpit filled with a masculine man who attracts other masculine men, again, manhood is a choice. I'm not saying these guys aren't men. I'm just saying they don't represent Jesus well, because Jesus was way, way beyond intellectual pontification. He was a physical man. He did physical things, and we need to represent. I just saw a pastor, a friend of mine, and I can't remember where he's at now. He's got a huge church in the north in Minnesota. He's on an elk hunting trip. He's like, "Come on, pray I killed an elk." I'm like, that's a guy I'll follow. No wonder that guy has a church of 30,000. You know what I'm saying? So I think that those things have really led away from that, and men not understanding that God made them and wants them to be better than they've ever been, not less than.
100% resonate with all that. I know I talked a lot about Josh, my mentor on your show. Josh wrote the book called The Standard, Discovering Jesus as a Standard of Masculinity. In the first chapter of that book, he talks about the feminization of Christianity, and it's not by anybody's, fault or doing, but Sunday school teachers are women oftentimes. The childcare providers are oftentimes women. So these are the ones that are that are leading the men, and it's just they're doing their best that they can. But what we're all clear on is that men need men in their lives. And I love what you said about this is who God made you to be. This is honestly something, Jim, that I've wrestled with for 4 years of being a Christian now, because I had 36 years of a life, not as a believer, where I accomplished some things, man. I got really big and strong. There was a lot of pride built around it. I accomplished some things in the business realm. And for me, when I became a Christian, it was oh, I have to let a part of that go. And it's this journey for me has been about bringing it back, but in the honoring of God. God gave me the ability to be big and strong. So how can I use this to honor him? God gave me the ability to have visions and start businesses. How can I do this now to honor him? So I love that you brought that to the conversation there. Is your toothpaste attacking your manhood? Probably. There's new science that demonstrates store-bought toothpaste may be linked to lower testosterone levels. But here's the catch-22. You got to keep your mouth clean, right? Poor oral hygiene is linked to low T and ED. But at the same time, big paste and natural paste options are packed with feminizing, manhood-killing ingredients that crush your confidence. Men swallow this stuff every day when they brush their teeth. No wonder testosterone levels have declined every decade since the introduction of these harsh chemicals in our everyday products back in the 1950s. But what's it got to do? Until now, there were never no other options. Yet with the brand new Legendary Men's Care Toothpaste Bundle, you can get your clean teeth, brighten your smile, and freshen your breath with the only toothpaste carefully crafted just for men. Free of harsh, kick-to-the-nuts chemicals found in store-bought paste, and safe from hippie oils and popular natural brands toothpaste that cause increasing moves, aka man boobs. For a limited time, you can get free shipping on your order of Legendary Men's Care Toothpaste, plus an extra 10% off when you use the coupon code REBUILD10. Again, go to legendarymenscare.com right now. Get free shipping plus an extra 10% off when you order today with coupon code REBUILD10.
Yeah, no problem. I just think my theology of masculinity is very simple. Just pursue the one who made you. He's got a plan. He loves his creation. He's way bigger than you. Don't look to the left or to the right. Don't look at how the pastor may look wimpy. Don't look at how our culture may say that masculinity is toxic. You just be who you should be as you pursue God, and he unwinds your story in this grand kingdom drama.
Going back to the integrity, which was really, the big piece there, he said that, is really, at its core for masculinity is a man that walks in integrity. I would say a lot of the men that we work with and serve are layered in shame, maybe due to previous choices, decisions, behaviors that they're caught up in. How does shame impact a man's ability to truly walk in integrity?
Yeah, I would say I just had a guy on my podcast, Ted Shimmer. We spent a whole episode just on this topic, and he's a pornography guy as well, so he deals with porn and shame. So first of all, guilt and shame are different. If you are engaged in some kind of sin, you are guilty of that sin. So let's not confuse that. You are guilty. But shame is the probably the number one thing that will hinder guys from being vulnerable and from confessing their sin, right? So shame really creates a veneer instead of creating a vulnerable person. Like when you came on our show, you just told your story. I mean, you just gave us the blood and guts and gore of your story. And I was like, okay, here's a guy who's not living in shame. Guilt, yes. Forgiveness, yes. Redemption, yes. So guilt, redemption, I mean, it's beautiful. It's a beautiful story as you unwind it. But once you have to say, okay, shame. When I experience shame, I have to say, okay, why am I experiencing this? Is it because I've fallen back into the sin? What is the reason for the shame? Well, God does not want me to experience shame because Romans 8:1 says there's no condemnation for those who are in Christ Jesus. So if I'm condemning myself, I have to ask myself why. Is there something I have not unpacked? And I think the fruit of shame is secrecy. And so if I'm living in secrecy instead of exposing my guilt, that's going to create more and more shame. It's not until I bring that guilt into the light that shame falls off me. And so I would just say to your men listening, if there are areas in your lives where you wouldn't want your mom to see you or your wife to walk in on you or whatever, if you're having these areas in it, it may not be pornography. It could be chewing tobacco. It could be you're like this big macho guy, but you're addicted to gaming. It could be a lot of things. Who knows what it could be? I know guys that are that hunt and fish so much it's embarrassing. I mean, I'm like, dude, and they hide the shame. They hide the money they spend on all this stuff. So I think shame can be any number of things, but we need to bring that to the light so that we can walk in the redemptive power of our best version.
Yeah, and for me, that became very clear early on in my journey, and I think that's what's enabled me to come on and share it in the way that I do, like without any restrictions, without any hesitations. Because it's like, if I'm not talking about these things, does that mean that I'm holding on to shame? So if I am holding on to shame, how do I get out of it? Well, I'm just going to open up and talk about it. And every single time I share, in every opportunity, it's like, wow, it just gets freer and freer and freer, and I just feel lighter as I'm walking around life. So yeah,
and people are attracted to that. People don't look at your vulnerability as weakness. They look at it as strength. They want to be around that because God has made us to be free men. And when we're not free men, we know we're restrained. When we meet a guy like Frank Rich, who's unrestrained, who's free, we go, okay, there's something about that guy that I need. And we realize, wow, I'm carrying shame in the form of secrecy. And I need to knock that off my shoulders and get rid of that chip on my shoulder of shame and bring my sin into the light so that I can begin to live a free life as a free man.
Yeah, freedom is only found through vulnerability. I love that. I guess to follow up there though, is there ever I'll see this sometimes, right? Maybe you do as well in some of the the work that you're doing and just being in this space for as long as you have been. Can vulnerability ever be a weakness though? Like can we lean too much into the weak side of vulnerability?
I think vulnerability turns into weakness when we discount who we are. I had a friend once said, or an author once said, let the world feel the full weight of who I am and let them deal with it. So the moment and sadly for me, many years in ministry, I had to make myself smaller because who I really was intimidating to my bosses. And I realized that vulnerability is actually a sin. Because it's saying to the Creator, I'm less than what you made. Does that make sense? So, and there's a verse in the Bible that says, we are not of those who shrink back and are destroyed. And so for me, when I shrink back, you remember that Seinfeld episode when George is coming out of the shower and the gal walks in on him, and she goes, oh, I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. And he's like, shrinkage. I was in the swimming pool. This is what once I'm experiencing shrinkage of who I am, once I do that vulnerability is weakness. We should never shrink back from who we are in the name of being vulnerable, right? In the name of, oh, I'm just telling people how it is. No, you're being a pansy right now, and you need to stop it because that's not your best version, and that's not who you are. You're not defined by your sin. right? Your sin doesn't define you. So once a man is like open about, oh, you're telling your story. Oh, I'm just defined by I'm a porn addict forever. Well, are you really? I mean, does your sin define you? I mean, is that really who you are? Are you an alcoholic forever? And I would argue, no, you're not. I would argue you're the child of a king.
It becomes a state of victimhood at that point, though,
It
right? It's
absolutely
like,
does. Yes, and that's weakness. I mean, if I'm going to be a victim, if I'm going to live not to be a victim, if I'm going to live in a victim mentality, there's different from you can be a victim and you can live in a victim mentality. A victim may not be a person with a victim mentality. They were violated. It may just mean they were violated. But the victim mentality is this person who's always defeated. It's never their fault. The world hates them. This victim mentality. And our world feeds into it like no other, right? And men don't buy into the victim mentality, even though they may have been violated somewhere. But they still don't feed into that mentality.
what's your take then on, extreme ownership or kind of taking 100%, personal responsibility for your life? What I'm hearing say is like, you're a victim to the situations and the circumstances, but you don't have to be a victim to the outcome of what it's going to happen in your life. A masculine man, manhood would be taking responsibility and fixing and solving that solution. So when you hear extreme ownership, kind of Jocko Willink's term there, you kind of see the David Goggins type of guys, like how do you process this and how do you kind of integrate that into your faith and into the work?
I've got Jocko's book right here. I think we've got him coming on our podcast here real soon. And I think it's one of the best books of leadership ever written. I think the book itself goes to an extreme that's not necessarily reality. You're talking military mind. You're talking a lot of things that normal humans don't go through. Do I believe in extreme ownership? Yeah, I think that you should own your behavior and your challenges. However, there are situations where you truly are violated. Somebody truly did you wrong, and there is a redemptive quality in that space where somebody needs to make that right with you, even though you've worked through it. Let me explain. Abraham Lincoln, when he was president of the United States, he was putting his cabinet together. And one name kept coming up over and over again. And he kept rejecting this man. Finally, his chief of staff said, hey, why do you keep rejecting this man? This man is the most qualified guy out there. And Abraham Lincoln, who was still is known as the ugliest man to ever be the U.S. president, the ugliest man to ever be a president, said this: I don't like his face. And the chief of staff said, well, how can you say that? No man can help the face. He's probably looking at Lincoln going, man, you're an ugly mofo. And he's going, hey, but nobody can help their face. And Lincoln said, after 40 years old, every man is responsible for his face. And so we have this ownership. At some point, we have to own our lives. But there is a redemptive quality out there that when people hurt us, they do need to, there does need to be reparations. And I don't want to say like reparations in the sense of redistribution or any of this social justice stuff. I just think that, man, I think at some point, if I've wronged somebody, I need to go to that person and say, forgive me. And at some point, and another point to the extreme ownership, there are times when you do everything you can in your power that is right, and a person under you, a subordinate, still fails. And extreme ownership would say, well, that's your fault. You're the leader. And I don't think that's true all the time. I think people just suck sometimes and screw up sometimes. And to put a label on that and say it's always the leader's fault, I just think that's way too rigid and just quite frankly, not reality in every situation. So I would definitely push on some of that stuff. Even though I love the book, it's one of my favorite leadership books ever. There are some flaws in that line of thinking. If you think beyond a military hierarchy and you think of a marriage or business world or partnerships.
Yeah. We have a SEAL and business partners with SEALs in one of our programs, and those guys just think and operate a whole lot differently, right? And I think that's where those mindsets, principles can apply if you're operating within those teams. The person at the top is responsible for it all, but you got SEALs operating underneath you. You don't have everyday human beings.
Yeah, I guess my question would be if that mentality, this would not be true for Jocko because he's been married to the same woman forever. If that mentality were true in war, why doesn't it transfer to marriage for them? Where 90% of them get divorced in wartime, 95% in peacetime. So if it's a true statement, it should transfer to all aspects of life. And see, the flaw in that thinking is it doesn't transfer. So when you look at something, anything, you've got to go, does this transfer across the board? So protecting integrity transfers across the board. I don't care if you're a military guy or if you're a pacifist. I don't care if you're a Islamic or if you're a Christian. I don't care if you lived in 900 AD or if you live now, every man who's ever lived on this planet realizes and understands the truth that protecting integrity is of utmost importance to masculinity.
Yeah, it wasn't on my notes here to discuss with you, but you mentioned it, and I've heard you talk about this a lot as I was researching and prepping for today. Is this divorce rate within SEALs or high level operators, within the military? I think you said 90% you end up in divorce in wartime, and then 95% in peacetime. Not pointing fingers or like really trying to call anybody out here. Clearly, this is something that you're passionate about because I've heard you talk about it a lot. What's going on there, Jim?
Well, first of all, we give all of our resources free to active military, to police officers, first responders. So I'm a huge, massive fan of the military. I think there's a couple things going on there. I think there's a massive. I think for the guys that are in battle, there's a post-traumatic stress that comes from battle that I don't understand. I'm so thankful that I can say that I don't understand it because I've got gnarly guys like that out there protecting me, and I just say God bless those guys. I want to help those guys, not condemn those guys. I think there is a something that we don't see in the media, we don't see on social media, and I think there's this whole alpha. You hear this alpha male talk all the time, and I think a lot of it is these guys that aren't Christian guys go out there and they just do stupid, childish things that ruin their marriages. Quite frankly, I think it's hard to shut. I just had a friend talk about his buddy the other day, who's a high level operator. He never could shut off the switch. And so if you can't shut off the battle switch during peacetime, over here you're conquering a lot of other things. You're starting fights, you're drinking, you're womanizing. So I think there is that dark element that people don't want to look at or talk about that is very, very much there. And then the other thing is, I think that these guys, again, realize, Frank, these guys are 22 to 30-year-old dudes. They're young guys. They wake up with a heart on. These guys are like high-level alpha guys. Who's helping them? Like, outside of the military, who's helping these guys understand, hey man, dude, if you're a real man and if you're this alpha man, you're going to be married to one woman the rest of your life. That's what an alpha man does. So you're going to do certain things. So to help these guys move beyond the compartment of battle, but into this compartment of husband and father and community member. So I think they need help. That's why guys like us love our first responders and our military, because we realize, hey, these guys, and I'll tell your guys the same thing, man. If they hit me up, I'll send them a book. I'll just send it to them. Because I just really am a huge fan. But I also have to, we also have to, as truth guys, go, hey, this is a problem we have to address, right? Just as I address this social justice theory that says that somehow I owe this guy something because of something that happened 300 years ago. I don't agree with that. I don't think it's true. And I want to call that out. I also want to call this other thing out. We want to call out the truth, even though we may get crucified for it. But we've got to stand up for the truth, or what are we going to stand for?
Yeah, so native. So we have a lot of young military, not the highest level. We have those guys, but a lot of just the infantry, the guys that are
Absolutely.
on the grounds, like because they're seeking that same leadership, right? And they're not seeing it in the higher ups. They're the get after it kind of. What's going to make them succeed in the military and in operations is not always going to be the same things that are succeeding in life, in marriage, and in relationships.
Well, and the hard part, and I've talked to a lot of military guys. The hard part is a lot of the military guys are bored out of their minds. They sit in a warehouse they're here on stateside. They're bored. Bored guys that are trained for war go out and do crazy crap. There's a boredom element here that, and then if you are deployed, these guys go from bored to balls on the wall, full out war. They may be deployed 2 years and have like 10 minutes or 2 hours that define their whole life because of a battle. So we just don't understand what goes on there, but there is this boredom element that they have downtime to research and learn and grow, but it can be. I have a guy that hated the military because he was stir crazy the whole time. He was a special ops medic and he never got used. And he was like, I hated the military. So there is an element we don't talk about there.
And we've had multiple guys on that have been in the military, and it was that boredom in the military that was the genesis of their pornography addiction. It's like right there for you. Like you have nothing to do. You're stressed, tired. Go to literally, they had a tent in Iraq. One of my best friends was in Iraq, and there was a black tent that if you needed to alleviate stress, you knew what the tent there was for. It was literally just filled with pornography. So there's a lot that I don't want to take up the entire conversation with being up on the military, because we love those guys.
Well, we love these guys. We want to
there.
help these guys. We want to help these guys just like we want to help the pastors who are being effeminate, or
Absolutely.
or the meatheads like you and I who are, think that looking good is manhood. You know what I mean? We just want to call everybody up, but sometimes you got to call them out.
We do want to make everybody a meathead, though. Kind of secretly, you and I think there's
how much do you bench, bro?
Right? You said something here recently. Alpha men marry one woman for the rest of their life. That's going to go against a lot of what's being shared online right now. I don't know if you're familiar with the manosphere, the red pill kind of community, like, high status men. It's like they have their pick of all the women. Why is that a dangerous, philosophy or ideology to follow? And what is it about, an alpha man that makes this one woman thing like the actual way that it's supposed to be?
Well, first of all, if you're an alpha man who thinks womanizing is an alpha move, then you're dumber than you probably look, because you can research secular materials. Just go online and research it. Who has the best sex and most fulfilling sex? And over and over again, secular organizations will say Christian monogamous couples. So why do Christian monogamous couples, this is reality here, this is not social media, why is it that they have the best sex? Well, because you need to realize God created sex. The female clitoris has no purpose on this planet except pleasure. And God did that. And the G-spot, it's got the perfect angle, God did that. It's beautiful. And the Bible says in Hebrews chapter 13, let the marriage bed remain pure. And so when we defile the marriage bed by bringing multiple women in there, whether they're imaginary women, right, through pornography, or whether they're real women that we're actually, having sex with, it takes away from the covenant relationship with a man and woman. Here's the other problem. And I'm so tired of this whole generation saying my wife is my partner. So when I married Shanna 30 years ago, we went down to the county clerk, we got a license. That license is called a marriage license. It made us legally married under contract of the government. So if we ever were to divorce, it would protect us from each other. So a contract in business, as you know, Frank, protects me from another person. It's a firewall. Well, we went to the government and did that under the law because that was the requirement. But then we had a representative of God, of Jesus Christ, marry us, because our marriage is one that comes under a covenant. A covenant is directly opposite of a contract, where a contract protects me from you. A covenant says everything I have is yours. Where a contract is a firewall, a covenant says I'm going to be completely open and vulnerable. I'm going to risk everything on this relationship. So when you enter a relationship of covenant where you're just releasing everything you have and pouring it into that person, everything into that person, there's no guardedness, no wall. Even, so we see this even in sex with couples that aren't married. I had a guy, Joshua Broom. He'd be a great guest for you. He was one of the top porn stars in his industry, and he realized, man, this is all fake. He's the one making the movies. He was the number one porn star of the year, and he's making the movies. He's like, this is all fake. I'm getting injections. I'm getting shots. It wasn't until he got out of the porn industry, gave his life to Christ, fell in love, and got into a monogamous Christian marriage that he realized what real sex was. Isn't that a crazy story?
No, I love Josh. Actually, Josh is a close personal friend. We've had him on almost a 2 hour conversation. Yeah. Because in fact, it was his current wife that led him to the Lord.
At a gym while he was being a meathead like you and me.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying, so for me, when these guys, and I went through a season of my life where I was with multiple partners, but nothing was as fulfilled as the relations I've had with my wife. We've been married 30 years, and the sex is better than it's ever been. It's more intimate. It's more frequent. I mean, I don't know what to tell you. I think that, there are lies out there, and we have to be man enough to say, I don't care if I'm in the minority. That is a lie. And that's what men do. Men don't go, oh, I better go with the flow here. Men say, even in the minority, I'm going to keep going. I'm going to expose this. I'm going to live in the truth. I'll just never budge, man. I just believe what I believe. And I've been preparing all my life to die for what I believe. So to get in some argument with some pissant guy who thinks he can womanize a bunch of people, I just go, dude, you have no idea what you're talking about. So to me, it's kind of humorous, but there are a lot of guys out there like that, man. that think that, hey, the more the merrier. And I'm like, yeah, that's going to ruin your marriage when you do get married.
Yeah, and they're and these guys. I mean, some of them have massive, massive followings, and they're leading men down a very destructive path. So, what can a young man do? Where can that discernment come from? How can we know if who we're listening to, who we're following, is actually providing truth versus something that's going to lead us down a dark, dangerous path?
Well, I think so the second aspect, there's 5 aspects of manhood in my book, and the second one is fighting apathy. So where the protecting integrity is the trailhead, fighting apathy is the climb. It's where you climb. It's the grind. You and I both know that you only get strong through resistance. I'm doing this 65,000 push-up challenge. We were at 400 guys at the beginning of the year. We're at 40 now, right? When I first started doing this thing, I was like grinding them out. I could do like 50 push-ups, but then my next set I do 25. Now I'm just like down there just ripping them. I mean, I'm ripping them with a bad shoulder that I just had a steroid injection to take away the pain, but I rip them. Well, I'm strong now. I bench pressed 225 20 times last year, and you don't do that by like laying around 135 and going, I hope I can get this for 8. You fight the resistance. And so we have to push the resistance. So for me, bro, whenever I hear a guy talk, I'm always sifting out, okay, is this a truth guy or is this not a truth guy? And so I sift out that stuff. So for you in our interview, I was like, wow, what's this guy like? And early on I go, oh, this guy's a truth guy. This is going to be fun, because I didn't know what to expect, right? And so so for me, part of what I do is I fight apathy. I resist all of the lies telling me that I have to be a certain way, or I can't do this, or this is true and it's not. So that's what I'm about. I just wake up in the morning and I just know I'm going to have to resist the world because I'm a Christian, which puts me in the minority.
Yeah, which is, I believe, even more important for men to challenge and build themselves up physically, right? Like, you're going to go out and tackle the world mentally, emotionally, spiritually. You better start from a strong foundation. It's something we've kind of, we've made some jokes around it being a meathead, all these type of things. Like, I can clearly see, behind you, you get the helmets and just you're a big, strong, burly man. And obviously we said that's not a necessary part of being a man, or it's not a necessary component of manhood, but in my opinion, it is a very, maybe not a requirement, but very close to being important. So talk about the need for physical development, physical strength, and how that ties into masculinity and manhood.
Well, I'll tell you what, man, here's the deal. God, when he made you and me, he made a whole man, not a half man. He made a whole man. He's about the whole man. John chapter 10, verse 10, Jesus said, I have come that you may have life and have it to the full. In John chapter 4, verses 6 through 8, this is cool. I don't know how much you guys are into the Bible, but I'm going to tell them a Bible part. They're going to love this. Jesus is walking through one region to another region. It was noon, so he would probably walk, I'm guessing if he's walking 3 miles an hour, he'd walk between 15 and 18 miles. He's sitting at a well, and the Bible says his disciples had went into town to get food. And he's sitting at a well, the Bible says, because he's tired from the journey. So he's tired and he's hungry. And then this woman shows up, single. Well, she's living with a dude, but she's not married. She shows up and he says, can you give me a drink? So he's tired, he's thirsty, and he's hungry. And he begins to minister to this woman. He changes her life. And it hit me that real men show up when they're tired, when they're hungry, when they're thirsty. Those are all physical components that make up a physical man. And it tells me that men push through the pain of living in a physical world and they show up to their life. And so many men don't show up. And so for me, I get up I love Joe Rogan's statement. He says, I owe my body this. And I agree with it. I owe my body 4 to 5 workouts a week. Yesterday, I did 400 push-ups and a HIIT workout. Today, I'm going to do a Peloton workout and 250 push-ups. And so for me, and here's the hard part, bro. I'm 56 years old. So the older you get, the harder it is to get up and work out, the more and more sore you are, and your body begins to break down as we age, right? I can't do what I used to do when I was in my 30s. But I keep going hard because the only way I can maintain strength physically is through battling against resistance. The only way I can maintain strength spiritually is battling through the resistance of this spiritual war. The only way I can gain strength mentally is by reading 50 books a year. So I try to be a whole man, but the physical aspect, you cannot ignore the physical part of our lives, especially in a world where we're the most obese society in the history of the world.
Is your toothpaste attacking your manhood? Probably. There's new science that demonstrates store-bought toothpaste may be linked to lower testosterone levels. But here's the catch-22. You got to keep your mouth clean, right? Poor oral hygiene is linked to low T and ED. But at the same time, big paste and natural paste options are packed with feminizing, manhood-killing ingredients that crush your confidence. Men swallow this stuff every day when they brush their teeth. No wonder testosterone levels have declined every decade since the introduction of these harsh chemicals in our everyday products back in the 1950s. But what's it got to do? Until now, there were never no other options. Yet with the brand new Legendary Men's Care Toothpaste Bundle, you can get your clean teeth, brighten your smile, and freshen your breath with the only toothpaste carefully crafted just for men. Free of harsh, kick-to-the-nuts chemicals found in store-bought paste, and safe from hippie oils and popular natural brands toothpaste that cause increasing moves, aka man boobs. For a limited time, you can get free shipping on your order of Legendary Men's Care Toothpaste, plus an extra 10% off when you use the coupon code REBUILD10. Again, go to legendarymenscare.com right now, get free shipping plus an extra 10% off when you order today with coupon code REBUILD10. Once again, a man goes the opposite direction of everybody else, right? It's like the world is going to McDonald's and Taco Bell drive-through. Like I'm gonna hit the gym and maybe have a protein shake afterwards. Talked a lot about that, man.
Or a Whopper.
with no bun,
with
no bun.
No mayo, no onions. I'm just kidding. A Burger King Whopper, man. That when I get triggered and I'm depressed, that I'm not gonna lie. I'm like ordering up, baby.
Is that your vice? The Whopper?
The Whoppers are a problem because they're so easy. But I mean, I only probably do 5 a year. It's not like I'm out Whoppering it up every day, right? But when you said that, I'm like, well, yeah, I hate McDonald's, but Burger King, that's different.
I want to know a little bit more about this 65,000 push-up challenge. Just real quick, give me the details, man. Kind of what you guys are doing.
I just had a buddy of mine had cancer several years back, and he wanted to he had stage 4 cancer, but this cancer he survived. He wanted to become stronger. He'd be a great guest on your show as well. His name's Rod Handley. He's got a cool ministry in Missouri, or in Kansas City, Missouri, called Character That Counts. But he decided to do push-ups. He went, Siri, how do I get stronger? And Siri said, do push-ups. His first day, he decided to do 65,000 push-ups. His first day, he couldn't even do one. This is a college football athlete at 60 years old, couldn't do a push-up. He just finished 65,000 this year on the way to 90,000. So he's killed me, and he's 62 years old now. And so he challenged me to do it. So I said, I'm going to do it. Well, I put it out there to my tribe just honestly, kind of like, hey, I'm doing this thing. I mean, honestly, I was so flippant. It was a joke. And like 400 guys within like 2 days signed up. And then we just started ripping them out, man. And people, so now we did a roll call because we have all their emails. We did a roll call. We're down to 40. And we're for the finishers. Only winners get trophies here, buddy. So for the people that finish this challenge, we've got a cool Popeye shirt. It's a Popeye with the flexing his bicep, and right here it's got our logo, and it says the challenge. So for me, I did the math, and if I do 250 push-ups a day, 5 days a week, I'll hit 65,000
in a year.
Yeah, and I'm on par to hit it earlier. I just don't like the wiggle room. You know what I mean? I don't want to be like, I got to do 800 more than I normally. I'd rather get there and have some margin.
Yeah. I love challenges, man. I ended up really, really hurting my back here, just with some subscap issues, but I was chasing 40 unbroken pull-ups. Like that was a goal. I got up to 30.
Kipping or not kipping?
No, strict.
What?
I did 32 ringed pull-ups. And then I had to put it to the side because I had some issues with literally my subscap. I started coaching Little League baseball a year ago.
Batting practice.
And I went from bodybuilder, massive tissue in my back, to now throwing a baseball hundreds of times a week. Literally, I got to the therapist and he's feeling on my back. He's like, dude, what did you do? And I explained to him I'd been a bodybuilder for 15 years. Start throwing. He's like, you've literally created a problem that you would probably be the only person in the world that has. Like my chest wasn't firing at all because it's obviously connected to the lats. So I've had to push that aside, but I did get 32 ring unbroken pull-ups. And not to gloat about myself, but you said you did 20. You said you did 225 for 20. My top ever was 40. So I did 40 reps, 225. I mean, that's like top combine type of stuff, but I was jacked. Dude. I mean, this was like at the peak of my physical development.
I did 24 set reps at 225 when I was training my son for high school football.
Okay.
I don't know what I could have done in college because I didn't care. I didn't care. But I had a goal 3 years ago of doing 20 pull-ups and I failed. I couldn't do it. I'm a 260-pound dude. I'm a big dude. So, but you've inspired me, man. I think I'm going to try to hit 20 again next year. To me, it's more of a weight thing. I'm a big dude, so pulling up that weight's tough. But if I lose the weight, a pull-up goal for me will be losing weight and doing pull-ups.
Yeah, I hover around 240. It's kind of where I float around most times. You got a little bit of size on me.
Well, 240. How tall are you?
6'3".
Oh, see, you're way better than me. I'm 6 foot, man. I'm a big dude. I need to drop some weight. I've got a little bit of a discipline issue with food. So food's an issue for me. And that's an area we're talking about fighting resistance. That's the one area I really need to fight that better. Yeah. I mean, if I walked into a room, you wouldn't be like, oh, look at that guy. I mean, I don't have the belly or anything. I'm just like, well, look at me. You can see.
I mean, you got 20 years too. I mean, 20 more years for me of just thick training and development. Like my body will have a new baseline at that point as well. Probably be 250, 260, just the structure and size.
Yeah, and I'm strong, and I'm still in I'm one of those guys. I believe legs are really important.
Yeah.
As you get older, so I'm still repping out 315. On the squats.
Well, I see all the time hiking with the backpack and everything. I mean, you're always carrying stuff around.
Dude, I do that every week. I do that. There's several things I do every week. You know what I mean? Because I like to mix it up a little bit. I don't run at all.
Me either, but I got a half marathon that I'm training for that I haven't started running.
I'll do stairs or something, but I don't do distance running. It's just no way. I do biking and hiking and lifting. So yeah, hit workouts. Mm-hmm.
What does legacy mean to you, Jim?
Legacy. So our fifth aspect of manhood in the book is finishing strong, which is a trail's end. And so for us, that really speaks to legacy. So what I tell young guys, I say, listen, whatever you put to the grindstone will be written on your tombstone. So what do you want people to say about you when you died? In other words, here's another way of putting it. When you die and you are buried in the ground, your family will be at your funeral. Will they be mourning or rejoicing, or will they care less about you? Your people that you work with will not mourn your loss when you die. It'll be your family. So live your life in a way that your family mourns you well. And so what I tell the young guys is we're all about finishing with an exclamation mark. Jesus on the cross, his last words, he screamed from the cross, "It is finished." And most Bibles will have an exclamation mark right there to prove it. I want to finish my life with an exclamation mark. So how do I do that? What I tell young guys with families, I say, listen, finish every day of the week strong. When you come home from work, you will not be remembered for what you did between 8 and 5. You will be remembered for what you did between 5 and 8. So those 3 hours are your window of legacy. And you have to finish every day strong for your family, your wife, and your children, because here's the deal. And this is really important. And maybe I'm being oversimplistic, but you already know I'm a simple guy. Finishing every day strong, compounded over time, is a strong life finish. A strong life finish leaves legacy. It's about legacy. You don't just get a legacy. Legacy is a reward. Legacy is the fruit of a life well lived. It's pretty simple. You can't just go say, I'm a millionaire, I'm going to go buy legacy. No, bro, you can't. Or I'm going to run a long ways, or I'm going to lift hard, or be a great athlete. That doesn't happen. You got to plan your legacy. Just like a retirement plan. You start planning that when you're 25 years old.
Well, it ties into one of the things I've heard you say about success. As I'm prepping for the shows, I'm always kind of keeping a running log of like, I really like that quote you said right there. Oh, I really like that one. And I'll make notes. And I heard you say on a podcast, I don't remember the exact one, but success in life is when those that you know the best respect you the most. It ties into that legacy components.
Absolutely. It's really cool. My youngest son just ran a marathon 2 days ago. He trained and trained and trained and trained and trained. I was preaching at a church on Sunday. So when I booked that preaching deal, I didn't realize he had a marathon thing set. So I personally could not go. But I was so proud to watch my middle son run the last 11 miles with my youngest son, to see my oldest son show up to cheer my youngest son on, and to have my wife there to buy him all lunch afterwards and cheer him on. To me, I thought that is a cool dad moment when the whole family rallies around one son to cheer him on. And that's what our family does. We have a saying in our family that Ramoses don't leave each other behind. We just don't. It's just how we've tried to form a legacy. And that legacy really was passed on by my dad, and it was passed on by his dad. And so that's, so that it's a beautiful thing when you can see legacy playing out while you're still alive. You know what I mean? So it was a proud dad moment. The marathon was the icing on the cake, but watching the boys rally around each other.
Love that, man. Jim, I wish I could have 5 more hours with you, man. We're going to definitely have to get you back on for part 2, man, because I see just so much of myself and you, obviously the younger version. I mean, we even did the comparison, right? Like, you're rocking the stash in the 80s
mustache.
and, I'm rocking it
that
back
mustache,
now.
I wish I had a picture with me with a mustache. I don't have one here.
Well, you did the one. Yeah. So your team did the one when you posted our episode of the side-by-side, the comparison. I think I had you on your wedding day. You were in a tux and everything.
Kidding me.
Oh, you didn't see that?
I never saw
that. Oh, dude, you gotta get with a team, man. They did this epic
serious?
side-by-side photo. Then they did another one where it was us laughing, and it was that moment where I brought up the Becky moment with she rejecting you from the prom and everything.
Well, dude, I was in Greece on my 30th anniversary, so I didn't have access to stuff. I'll have to go back and look at that.
Yeah, man, your team did some crazy, some amazing graphics
you're better looking than I
our
ever
conversation.
Was, man. So I wish I had your face. I would have. I don't know how I got such a beautiful woman with my face. I don't know, man. It must have been the chest.
It's the manhood, man, the masculinity, right? Like you allowed the woman to drop in, fall into her, her feminine side. Well, let's bring it to a close, man. Obviously, we talked about 3 aspects here within your book. If you can, maybe just, share with us the last 2. We have the integrity, the apathy, and then the final one is to finish strong. So share with us, the other 2, and then where people can find the book and where people can connect with you online. And we'll bring today's conversation to a close.
So we've already been talking about the 3rd aspect, the apex of manhood, the summit. We've already talked about it without knowing it is pursuing God passionately. You'll never be the man that you've been designed by God to become until you realize that you've been created by a God who loves you, who has a plan for you, and wants to unfold that plan to you as you surrender your life to him. And you will never be more masculine than when you do that. And God makes you a better man, not less of a man, more of a man than you ever could have been. And then the descent of that off that mountain is leading courageously. You talked about legacy. That legacy that we talked about just now only happens if we're leaning into the mountain as we're going downhill with our family. A lot of guys will coast on the downhill. They'll lean back. But when you lean back, you lose traction. You lose focus. You lose the ability to navigate clearly. And so what we tell guys is, listen, man, if you're going to live for God, if you're going to live for Christ, if you're going to be your best version, you need to take your family, take the people that you love with you. They are depending on you. And the difference between a male and a man realizes that. He burdens that responsibility and he takes his family with him. A male goes, listen, I'm going to defer to a man because I do not want to do that. And so many guys listening to this podcast have been damaged and are in the middle of wreckage. And I'll use the word violated. We're violated by a bio dad who was a male and not a man. And even guys right now listening to this are going, oh my gosh, for the first time I realized my dad was not a man, but my stepdad was the man who led me down the mountain. And so I think that this is a huge aspect for these younger guys raising families. Lean into the mountain. Don't shrink back. Lean into it. People's lives are depending on you to be an example for these guys. And I would just tell your guys, you've got this. You've got what it takes. You've got this. Nobody else can do what you're going to do, but you. You've got this.
Guys, Strong Men, Dangerous Times, 5 essentials every man must possess to change his world. Get out there, grab it on Amazon. Jim, what's on the docket for Men in the Arena? What are you excited about as we bring 2022 to a close?
Yeah, appreciate that. Well, first of all, don't search my name out. I've tried to create an organization that's not about me. If you look at the Men in the Arena or Men in the Arena, you'll find everything I do. We're on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook. We've got a forum out there with 13,000 guys. We've got 60,000 followers on Instagram or on TikTok. So Google Men in the Arena, not Jim Ramos. And I would just say I've got a book finished. I'm waiting to sell it to an agent called The Full Capacity Man, where we really dial in those 5 that we talked about today. We dial it in to really, we take a sharp knife and hone it with this book, and we unpack 20 qualifications that really make a man his top level. It really takes those 5 and dials it in. And it's like when I went and sighted my rifle the other day. I put it on paper at 100 yards, and then I dialed it into the bullseye. And that's what this book does. It's probably I think it's my magnum opus. I think it will be the greatest work I've ever written for men.
Love that. Well, there's the foundation for our next conversation. So we'll stay connected. I'd love to, be a part of a launch team, get that out there in any way we can, because such a big fan of what you're doing, Jim, and you truly inspired me, and just to continue to level up in my life and level up in the, in the way that I'm leading our men here. So we like to end every conversation with a closing. Guys, we'll get all of the Men in the Arena stuff plugged down in the description notes and in the show notes there below. But Jim, as we end today's conversation, I believe living a superhuman life is understanding you're coming from the belief that you are here for a purpose. So there's a divine calling on every single one of our lives. But knowing that calling is not enough. We must be intentional and aggressive in our actions that we take every single day. When you pair those two together, I believe, and that's what I talk about, is living a superhuman life. But as we bring today's conversation to a close, Jim Ramos of the Men in the Arena podcast and movement, how would you define living a superhuman life?
Saying yes, even when everyone else is saying no.
Love it. Love it. Strong men, forge your own path. We're lions. We're not sheep, guys. We love you. Guys, if you're getting value out of the show, we've seen some tremendous growth here, and it's all because of you. It's because of you tuning in, the ratings and reviews, and the sharing of this episode. If you haven't done so yet, you want to support the show, you can leave us a 5-star rating right there on Apple, whatever platform you guys are listening to. But more importantly, if there's a man or a young man in your life right now that is going through some of these struggles, struggling with maybe finding his way, struggling with finding his calling from God, do us a favor, but do him the blessing of sharing today's conversation with him. But for Jim Ramos, Men in the Arena, Frank Chris, host of Superhuman Life, we love you guys. We'll see you next week.